The Tower of London is known for being an impenetrable fortress, which has only ever been stormed really once during the Peasants' Revolt. It's considered to have been a barbaric place of torture where prisoners were racked and where queens were beheaded on the tower's lawn in horrific fashion. It was one of the most feared prisons in history, and for this it was deemed to have been a great place to keep some of the most valuable jewels in the world, the English crown jewels. Still today the crown jewels are kept inside of the tower, inside of the Waterloo Barracks, in which billions of pounds of valuables are displayed, but they do still serve a purpose, as during coronations and state occasions they are used in ceremonies by the monarch. Today we look at the incredible story of when, in 1671, a very daring man attempted to steal the English crown jewels. Remember to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. One of the most audacious attempts to steal incredible riches saw Colonel Blood almost manage to succeed in one of the craziest heists in history. Thomas Blood was an Irishman, born in County Meath in 1618, and he came from a good family, his father being a blacksmith, and his grandfather lived in a castle and was an MP. When the English Civil War broke out, Blood came to England to fight for the Royalist cause and Charles I. However, when it was looking likely that Cromwell and Parliament would win, he switched sides, fighting for the Roundheads. When Charles I was defeated and subsequently executed, Blood was rewarded with a large estate by Parliament, and he was also made a Justice of the Peace. When Charles II came onto the throne during the Restoration, Blood returned to Ireland, fearing what would happen to those like him who fought for Parliament. However, in Ireland, he joined a plot with other dissenting Cromwellians and former soldiers, and then tried to take control of Dublin Castle and take the governor, the Lord Ormonde, a prisoner. This ultimately failed, and yet again Colonel Blood was forced to flee, but now he was a notorious criminal and he left for Holland, with people seeking his life. He became one of the most wanted men in England and Ireland, but bizarrely in 1670 he returned to England, changing his name, and he began to work as a doctor or an apothecary in Romford Market in London. He was then part of another grand plot to kidnap Lord Ormonde, his nemesis, with Blood tracking his movements. Ormonde was taken from his coach by Blood's henchmen, was then taken along Piccadilly to be hanged at Tyburn, but Ormonde somehow was freed by a servant who chased on his horse. Blood's reputation as a criminal and a man willing to commit murder and terrible crimes was enhanced, but he then decided to create an elaborate scheme to steal the crown jewels. Blood was a man of daring, and who would defiantly do anything to continue his notorious reputation. He did not wait for long, and within 6 months he made his attempt to steal the crown jewels. Around April 1671, he visited the tower and was dressed at the time as a parson or a priest, and he was joined by a woman pretending to be his wife. At the time, inside of the Tower of London, you could view the jewels if you paid a small fee to do so. Similarly to like an entrance fee, you could admire the riches if you wished to. Blood paid this money, but whilst he was viewing them, his female accomplice faked an illness. She then complained that she had stomach problems and begged the master of the jewel house, the 77-year-old Talbot Edwards, who had just been appointed to this job, to fetch an ailment. Hearing the commotion, Mrs. Edwards, Talbot's wife, summoned Blood and his fake wife into their apartment, as it was next to where the jewels were being kept. She invited them upstairs to their apartment to recover, and following this, Blood and his wife thanked the Edwards family for their care, and they left. A few days later, Colonel Blood then returned to the Tower of London and thanked both Talbot Edwards and his wife for their care, and he gave Mrs. Edwards 4 pairs of white gloves as a way of saying thank you. He became close with the family, and then allegedly even an offer was made for Blood's fake nephew to marry the daughter of the Edwardses, and Blood said they would be given several hundreds of pounds in income following the marriage. On the 9th of May 1671, he visited the tower again, and Talbot Edwards was convinced by Blood to show him the jewels again, and also to show his alleged nephew and 2 of his friends. The men were waiting for dinner prepared by Mrs. Edwards for Blood and his companions, and the jewels were being kept behind a metal grille inside of the Martin Tower. It was then when Colonel Blood enacted the plan to steal the crown jewels. It was reported that Blood and his men carried canes that had rapier blades and daggers concealed inside of them, as well as pistols. They entered the vault where the jewels were being kept, and one of the accomplices stood by the door keeping watch, whilst others were with Blood and Edwards. As the door closed, they threw a cloak over Edwards and bashed him over the head with a hammer and knocked him to the floor. The elderly guardian of the jewels was then beaten, bound, gagged and stabbed to keep him quiet. Following this, the men removed the grille, keeping the jewels locked away, and then they stole them. Blood used his hammer to flatten St. Edward's crown so he could hide it under his coat, and his brother-in-law cut the sceptre with the cross in two as it didn't fit in his bag. A third man stuffed the sovereign orb down his trousers in classic robbing fashion. Whilst this was going on, the elderly Talbot Edwards was still bound, but he was struggling a lot, and it's thought that at some point the alarm was raised about the theft of the crown jewels. It's claimed in some senses he shouted murder and treason, that raised the alarm, but also that his son may have raised the alarm after hearing the commotion and alerting that the crown jewels were being stolen. The party of thieves then tried to flee the Tower of London, and they ran to their horses at St. Catherine's Gate, where they dropped the sceptre and they fired their pistols at guards who tried to stop them. The group ran by Tower Wharf next to the tower, and apparently they even tried to look for alleged thieves to trick the guards, but they were then chased by Captain Beckman, Edward's brother-in-law. Blood then took his pistol and shot at him. He missed, but Blood was apprehended near an iron gate. The crown had then fallen from his cloak and was found, and Blood refused to name the co-conspirators. He said it was a gallant attempt, however unsuccessful. It was for a crown. Eventually the globe and orb were recovered, and several stones on them were missing and loose, and the co-conspirators captured. The London Gazette reported the events as Whitehall, May the 9th. This morning about 7 o'clock, 4 men coming to Mr. Edwards, keeper of the jewel house in the tower, desired to see the regal crown, remaining in his custody. He carries them into a room where they were kept and shows them, but according to the villainous design they, it seems, came upon, immediately they clap a gag of a strange form into the man's mouth, who, making what noise and resistance he could, they stabbed him with a deep wound into the belly with a stiletto, adding several other dangerous wounds to his head with a small weapon they had with them, as it's believed to beat together and flatten the crown, to make it more easily portable, which having, together with the ball put into bags they had that purpose brought with them, they fairly walked out, leaving the old man grovelling on the ground, gagged and pinioned. Following his capture, Colonel Blood refused to answer anyone but to the king, and was taken to the king's palace in chains. He was questioned by the king, the Duke of York, Prince Rupert and other members, but at some point during the meeting, Blood was bizarrely pardoned. He was also given land in Ireland worth £500 a year, which caused outrage. It's believed that the king may have feared revenge from Blood's followers, and that the king may also have been impressed and amused by the audacity of Colonel Blood and his plan to steal the crown jewels. He was even invited back to court a number of times. Some even allege that Charles II himself was involved in the plot, as he wished for more money as he was broke. So Colonel Thomas Blood's plan to steal the crown jewels from the famous Tower of London was foiled, and was subject to much controversy and debate. He was an infamous trickster, and some even believe that he was responsible for faking his own death, due to the fact he owed money, and may have done this to avoid paying debts. The crown jewels since Blood's attempt have never been subject to theft or attempts, but today they are still housed within the Tower of London, at one of the world's most famous castles. Once again, thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.